Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their diverse stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. On today's episode, Bernard and Burnett Grant join us to discuss their involvement in the documentary Sensory Overload, coming to Hulu this week. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Bernard and Burnett, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for returning here on Autism Stories.
Thanks for having us. Okay, thanks for having us, Doug.
I think the first time we met was maybe when you were initially on Autism Stories, but several years ago now.
That was a while ago. I don't even know how many years ago, but more than 3. But I think it's been at least 4 years. Yeah, I don't know. I'm never very good with time. But yeah, since then we've become friends.
Yes. And I wanted both of you to return to Autism Stories to discuss a documentary that you both are in called Sensory Overload that will be on Hulu on March 3rd. It will be weird seeing the two of you on Hulu, but it will be wonderful. How did the two of you get involved in this documentary?
I was contacted by someone on LinkedIn who worked at Vox. 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, people often contact me on LinkedIn of just about all kinds of things. And most of it's, I guess, it's not worth paying attention to. But this was someone who worked at Vox and was a filmmaker and was looking for people who might be interested in this film, and we also a good fit for it. And so we talked and did video meetings for a few weeks as I learned more about it. And I saw it as an opportunity to be autistic representation, which is what I've wanted to see. A lot of people want to see, even though I don't really want to be in front of a camera. I don't want. I'm a private person. That's what I saw it as. It's hard here. And yeah, so Burnett was the one they contacted, and so they were interested in Burnett's story. And so I was involved because I guess I'm just always with Burnett unless they're at work. And so I was just involved kind of like in the background. Bernard was key to my story as they determined it, which makes sense because we live together. We spend a lot of time together, so yeah.
Now, the film was produced as part of the Sensodyne Sensory Inclusion Initiative to raise awareness on the importance of sensory inclusivity in oral care. Definitely one of my least favorite sensory experiences is going to the dentist. What are your experiences, the two of you, with the dentist in particular to sensory overwhelm?
The sensory issues are the main reason that I avoid going to the dentist. So before this, part of this film was us filmed at the dentist. That was my first time going to the dentist in a few years, 5 years. I don't remember, 3 to 5 years. And before that, I think it was like 8 years. And it's mostly just due to this sensory issues when I was at the dentist. So I just don't want to go. For me, I mean, there's obviously that overwhelming aspect of having them hook me around during things in my mouth. But that's not as overwhelming as just the general environment, like the fluorescent lights. And well, a couple of years ago, I went to a dentist where there's a waiting room and there's a TV blaring, and people and so the receptionist talking on the phone at the same time, and the lights were too bright. They're always too bright, and so that makes me feel trapped. And I start and I sometimes it hurts, and I start shaking. But then by the time I'm ready to go back, I'm just tired and I just want to go home. And so that's one of the main things that pisses me off. I also worry too that I've never experienced an earthquake, but like, what if there's an earthquake, or what if they slip, or what if something happens and something happens, they poke me in the mouth? Anything can happen. I don't know. I've never heard of that happening.
I haven't, but now you just added one more thing for me to think about at the dentist. They do have those sharp objects, right? And they're in your mouth, so I could see that could be problematic.
I think about this. The drilling sometimes, that vibration in my mouth, goes through my head and my body. It makes me feel like I'm gonna vomit, and I never have. But like vomiting while someone is drilling in your mouth would just be very gross and awful for everyone involved.
Talking about sensory overwhelm, I think when people talk about sensory differences in us humans, they don't realize there's a difference in sensory overload versus sensory overwhelm. So, what are some things that cause both of you a sensory overload that can lead to sensory overwhelm, which, causes things like meltdowns and shutdowns to happen?
I was thinking about like things that I need, but I don't really notice how they're getting to you, like just household items, like air purifiers, a ceiling fan in the winter, in the summer, air conditioners, and these things. And then like I remember things like that were going, and then Burnett was vacuuming not long ago, and I had a meltdown, and of course I didn't know what caused that meltdown till like maybe the next day. There's those kinds of things, like just not if I'm not paying attention. Um, if I pay attention, I can turn off things that I'm not using. Yeah, those kinds of things give me meltdowns, and I don't even notice that they can cause meltdown. Also, another thing is not being aware of my body temperature all the time, and so I can be hot. Like I'll have a meltdown. Burnett will come in the house and say, after work, I work at home, and they'll say, "Oh, it's really hot in here," and I realize, oh, that's what triggered my meltdown, or just being really cold and shutting down, feeling like I'm going to fall asleep, but not realizing it's cold, not realizing what's causing things. So yeah, for my understanding is sensory overwhelm leads to overload. But yeah, so all day there's various sensory inputs coming in, and of course, as you get out of the house, outside of your control, it becomes like more and more unpredictable. It's the it's the amount and frequency of these inputs, in addition to the unpredictability, cause meltdowns and shutdowns where you become completely overwhelmed. Oh yeah. So obviously protecting my ears, like with loops, um, head, headphones, sunglasses, and gloves going out, especially for the cold. But one thing that I don't know if it affects other people this way, and I don't know if people consider it much. But processing information, if I have to try to process something illogical, someone's saying something that just doesn't make any sense to me, that can cause overwhelm because I'm using a lot more cognitive energy processing, and so things like social manipulation, gaslighting can cause me to melt down because it's intentionally illogical and meant to confuse me. So yeah, it's sensory input in addition to the processing, which includes socializing.
Burnett, thinking about sensory overload, obviously it affects us in all aspects of our lives. However, I think one area this overload impacts us certainly is in employment. In your job and career as a lab technician, how does sensory overload like specifically impact you there?
One reason I was drawn to lab work, I realized, is because I'm an introvert. I like being inside places where the sensory input can be controlled and modulated. Labs has mostly been fine. They are mostly need to be temperature regulated, temperature and humidity. There are places where you can generally put on headphones and listen to music, or just and work quietly. It's great for introversion. Mostly good. There's always I notice there's always components of every job that have challenging sensory, like as for instance working in labs that were in a food production facility. I would have to leave the lab frequently and go into loud places and put on air protection. Then there's the tertiary lab where I work now, which one side there's a quiet extraction bench, but on the other side um, there's a lot of instrumentation, chromatograph and spectrometers going. And so, but you put in headphones and block it out, listen to music. It's nice. I like working indoors. Well, sound like your fun, like great work environment. Oh, I have now. Yeah.
I mentioned earlier that Sensory Overload, the documentary that the two of you are in, will be out on March 3rd. And I saw clips from the trailer, and one of the scenes had the two of you in a coffee shop that definitely looked like a coffee shop, Bernard, that the two of us met at once. But Burnett, you were too busy to be with us on that day. You're a busy person. Uh, now, seeing that coffee shop made me think about a place that sensory overload almost always happens to me every time I visit them, and that's coffee shops and restaurants. In what ways do you think coffee shops and restaurants can do a better job at reducing sensory overload?
So I don't know. As the particular coffee shop we are talking about, they serve they serve food too, and it's not very big. So like this noise that probably doesn't bother the neural majority. They can tune it out if they want to, but which I hear because I absorb everything in my environment. The noise I'm thinking about is just the operations of the place. So like a lot of clanking of dishes, but also people talking to each other. The staff talking to each other and people taking orders and giving orders to the staff. And then, but mainly that clanking of dishes because they have to move those tubs around and stuff. I'm thinking there's so much of the operations that they can't help but make noise. There's also times when places are quiet. So it's, I was immediately going to say, having designated quiet hours, if they can't implement that for whatever reason, then just advertise like these are our quietest hours. And it doesn't have to say it's for neurodivergent people. It doesn't have to say it's for I don't want to say sensory sensitivity because I don't believe in sensory sensitivity. But it doesn't have to be for our sensory world. It doesn't have to be advertised that way. But just saying these are our quietest hours. Because even non-neurodivergent people, like just introverts or people who want to work outside of their house, but they need a quiet space. It's just be really awesome if they advertise their quietest hours. That's what comes to mind. So designated quiet hours, if during certain hours, they're mindful of the sensory output that's going on. Maybe just like 2 hours a day. And if it's during the week, in the morning or early afternoon, assuming that disabled people don't have day jobs, maybe try to oh yeah, and this in the film, it's based on the premise that 20% of the population has significantly higher sensory processing than everyone else. So it's not really a small minority. It's a large proportion of people. So even just being mindful of that, start thinking about the fact when they're operating that that we're putting out a lot of noise in this area because this is where the dishes are going or whatever. They can put signs up in their shops to say this is the noisiest area. Or, oh, this would be a least quiet area. Oh, that's brilliant. I want to mention one more other thing. This is so often the case of just going places, just not playing music. Just don't do it. That is exact. Like I think about going to the grocery store today because I'm going to go to the grocery store today, and that's just what drives me crazy. It's just the music playing. It makes me feel trapped, and after a while, it hurts my body. They just don't do it. Yeah, because I think about that. They maybe they need the lights really bright because maybe I don't know what it's like. Maybe some people don't see dim light very well, so they need the light really bright for them, and they can't control all the noise of carts and people moving and the chaotic ways that people move. Yeah, they can do that. They can. That's something that can be controlled.
The music is maybe the most annoying and frustrating thing. It feels like we're being taunted. Like to your point, Burnett, like, you talked about like 20% of our population have these sensory differences. And in it, we have people, people are talking, they're cooking, the bussers are getting dishes clanking, and you're hearing clanking. The doors are opening and closing to the restaurants, sometimes to the kitchen. You hear people walking back and forth to like the bathroom and things like that. Waiters and waitresses are talking to you to get your order, and that's not enough noise. So we need to make sure to throw in some music as well.
Yeah. Um. Ugh. It's just so unnecessary. Or here's the thing: instead of quiet hours, they can have music hours. Just there may be 2 hours a day you play some music, and that's it. I guess. But I think they need to tell people. They need to put up a warning first. But the reason is unnecessary.
I haven't heard that idea before, but I kind of like it because at least it shows you that they're taking that into account of 20% of their potential customers. Otherwise, it's like, well, we don't really care one way or another. We're going to play our music the entire time that we're open.
Yeah, I haven't hear nonsense about the business case for inclusion, business case this and that, whatever. 20% of your pub, that's a lot of potential revenue loss if your eaters, making it difficult for them to come into the store.
Now, Burnett, you had mentioned it earlier, and in terms of authentic autistic representation in media, and I feel like there's momentum happening in that direction. There's more and more of us as autistic people. More of us in documentaries and films and TV shows. So in thinking about that, I was definitely overjoyed to see the two of you that you'll be in a documentary that will be on Hulu. So I get to see the two of you at Hulu. I'm so excited about that. What aspects of the diversity of the autistic experience would the two of you like to see in the future in regards to documentaries, films, and TV shows?
I want the neurotypical wounds to go away. So I want these things to stop being made by non-autistic people. That's what the mess is coming from. They're just not autistic, and so they don't know what it's like to be autistic, and so they lean on stereotypes. Jesus, they hire in films they hire non-autistic actors so often. It just it's just weird. But I like to see, like when I see I don't really watch a lot of documentaries because the neurotypical ones. I stopped looking at media representation of autistic people. But I like to see autistic people like living alone, because so many autistic people, like in the film premiere for this documentary, Sensory Overload. Someone asked me if during that night, if what was it like to live alone? Like, do we live alone? And like, almost 39, we've been living on our own for a very long, because we're adults. Like, seriously, it was a very infantilizing question. It's like, because you're autistic. I was very confused by that. What was she talking about? Like, yeah, if you're autistic, there's something like people think that you can't live independently, I guess. Oh, like a group home. Yeah, you live in a group home. Like, I'm thinking of the show that was on NBC. I forgot what it was called, but it was autistic people, autistic adults, and they have this neurotypical person living with them, and I couldn't figure out what she was doing other than infantilizing them. That is like, why do they need her? Like, I understand that a lot of autistic people need that kind of support, but how come it's just not really represented that much? And then often if they're autistic, there's something very stereotypically autistic about them. And I'm not even gonna get into what it looks like, but I think of it as autistic face, like blackface. But it's often a mockery. And so just autistic people living their lives, just being themselves, and just there's no single way to do it. As as I hear, like as Becca Lloyd Hector, who's been on the podcast, says, there's different brands of autism. We all have our own different brand. It's a very unique neurotype. So even Burnett and I were identical twins, but our professional lives are so different. But so I would just love to see just like all kinds of just representation of people. When I think of it, the main thing that comes is just like living independently, seeing them go to school, seeing them go to work, just seeing how they navigate that. And just, it doesn't have to be pathologizing is the thing I'm thinking about. So yeah, just pathologizing. There's something wrong with this person. And there's, what you're bringing to is there's always, social hierarchy built in. So there's always showing that the autistic person is, lower than, the neurotypical, the majority. So, that's what's being shown. For me, well, it's something that doesn't center neuronormativity. It just truly doesn't. For instance, I'm asexual, agender, raceless. I don't have a religious or political affiliation. I just don't see myself through the neuromajority political constructs at all. I don't. But of course they're always projected on me. That's just how people's minds work. They're grown and conditioned to it. Oh, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about this and I did write it down to understand it more. But intersectionality, not just intersectionality from the perspective of how people see people, the race and gender and whatever they project on them, but also the intersectionality from that person's perspective, from how they actually see themselves, and then and understanding how those, or not understanding necessarily, but just showing how those two, like I think of it as different levels of intersectionality, like first person intersectionality versus third person, and then so showing it from that person's perspective, how they see themselves, and how the barriers they come up with, in the sense that other people's perception of them doesn't align with how they see themselves. Yeah, sorry. I hope that made sense.
Made a lot of sense.
Can I add one more thing that I would like to see in media representation? And this is why it needs to be autistic people making these things, is autistic friendship and community. Neurotype matching is so powerful. Like neurotype matching to people of similar neurologies, they meet. Like you and I, Doug, we just communicate so well with each other. But then if we try to communicate with a non-autistic person, like a neurotypical person, it would be very difficult because that's cross-cultural communication. Neurotype matching is intercultural communication. And I would love to see that portrayed, like autistic people going to the community, talking to an autistic person and just having no trouble, and then going out in the world and then just showing how there's nothing wrong with the autistic person, there's nothing wrong with the neurotypical person, but they do have different cultures based on their neurology. And I would love to see that. Like, they want to see power, essentially. And I would love to see autistic advocacy too, because that's just such a part of autistic culture. It's such a autistic culture. I would love to see autistic advocacy portrayed. Yeah, autistic advocacy is so central to our culture, yet so absent from these narratives. Unless I'm missing something. It's weird.
No, you're probably not, Burnett. There's a lot that's missing, I think, still. Now, is there anything either of you would like our listeners to know about the documentary Sensory Overload premiering on Hulu on March 3rd that we didn't already discuss?
Oh, so people have told me that I'm going to be a celebrity. Lots of people have, and I don't know if they're all joking or what, but I like to believe that people don't become celebrities from documentaries. And in all honesty, people don't still like autistic people that much. So, I don't think I'm going to become a celebrity. I had no intention to. I just want people to know that I've had no intention of becoming a celebrity, and I hope that doesn't happen. Yeah, it won't happen. It's just documentary. Okay, thank you. I don't think you're gonna lose your privacy. If that's what you're worried about. Okay, lots of things. I just want to say, people are gonna see this anyway. I was in such a small part of documentary that I was, concerned about, like what I said earlier, the neurotypical lens, neurotypicalized lens. I didn't know if they were gonna pathologize autistic people. I don't know. But when I watched the film, I was amazed by the two parents. Get nervous around parents sometimes, because there's really some amazing parents out there, but there's also, you know, Disability Day of Mourning is it's thinking of remembrance of if filicide, like parents who killed their children. It's just I don't know. Parents can be difficult sometimes around their disabled children. But the two parents in the documentary are just amazing. I think you're going to see this anyway, but I really do want people to see them and pay attention to them. They're great advocates. They're advocates now, but they both were so honest about struggling with their own ableism and accepting their autistic child the way they are. And they did eventually accept them. And now they're advocates. They're out there doing great advocacy work. And I was just so moved by them, and it was wonderful to get to meet them. And I just hope a lot of parents of autistic people can learn from them, or even maybe identify with them. Those parents just really moved me. So I just wanted to talk about that. Yep, I learned from them, and I think a lot of people can learn from them.
Well, thank you, the two of you, so much. It's always great when I have a couple of friends on Autism Stories to join me. Thanks so much, and I'll be talking with the two of you very soon.
Oh, you're great. Yeah, fun talking to you, Dad. Thanks.
Thanks so much to Bernard and Burnett for the conversation. To learn more about the documentary Sensory Overload, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. We always love hearing from you, and would especially love to hear from you relating to this episode regarding what ways have you found to be most helpful in managing sensory overload? Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to be the best version of their authentic selves through customized life coaching and community groups. We also support parents and partners of autistic individuals by providing insights and guidance to bridge communication gaps and nurture mutual understanding. So please visit autismpersonalcoach.com to begin your experience of judgment-free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.